All right, I have the time at 6:35, so I'd like to get started with the public hearing. My name is Rick Cruz. I'm board chair of the Public Charter School Board. I'm joined today by a number of our members. Starting on the left, Scott Pearson, our executive director, Naomi Shelton on my left, Ricardo Ganjam, our secretary, here on my right, and through the power of technology, Darren Woodruff, available by phone. Darren, can I get a positive sign from you?
Is now being recorded.
What? He's not yet on. Okay. Well, he will be shortly. I can still start. Yeah. All right. So while we're anticipating Darren joining us for the meeting, I will start with our public hearing before our public meeting. And before beginning the hearing portion of this evening, just wanted to take a moment to ask if there are any public officials in attendance who would like to be recognized. All right. If not, we'll start our first public comment opportunity for this evening. If there are any members of the public that wish to address the board at this time, there are many items on the agenda this evening for us to vote on. So this is one opportunity to voice your opinion on any of them prior to our vote. So if anyone would like to, we've got a few seats there. Thank you. We've got one taker. Anyone else, please feel free to join the dais as well. Ma'am, if you'd introduce yourself, and you have about 2 minutes for any public remarks you'd like to make.
Okay, and 2 minutes is great, because I'm not a public speaker. But my name is Donna My name is Donna Burton. I am a grandparent of 4 children at Friendship Southeast Academy. I just wanted to give a couple of comments. First of all, it's a grateful experience from day one. This is my first year bringing my grandsons there. I have 2 granddaughters that's been going for a while, but my 2 grandsons that I live with, that live with me, it's truly been an experience from day one. My main thing that really stuck out was how the staff greeted the children, not only my grands, but everybody as scholars, and that meant a great deal to me. When I first started bringing them, I said, okay, maybe this is something that they're trying to show off or, just show a great representation. But everything that happened is continuing to happen. Their personalities, their smiles, they greet them with smiles. And the scholar thing is always good morning, scholars. And that means a great deal. I have a 4-year-old grandson who never been with anyone, never been at a daycare or anything. And his first day there, it just felt like home. It felt like a family. And I really loved that. I was even comfortable with leaving him on the first day. My 8-year-old grandson, he's in the 2nd grade. He was very shy at the beginning. We came from PG County. He was very shy at the beginning. Now he's in he plays basketball. He says, Grandma, I want to play basketball. So I just thank God for the charter school because of the personalities, the love that they show. And it's, like I said, it's like family. So I truly appreciate each and every one of them, the principals. We pray every morning, and my grandchildren, don't forget this person and don't forget that person. So, and that really makes a difference to me because these are our children. This is the future. So to open up their hearts to them, their love to them, and to accept them in as family means a lot to me. So I just wanted to give you all that comments.
Thank you. That's a nice start to the meeting. I know there are some smiles on the faces of many folks on this side of the room, and thank you very much. We appreciate you coming out and sharing them.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. Darren, I hear you're on.
Yes, sir. We had a little technical difficulty, but I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic.
Darren Woodruff making command performance this evening. All right, we're about to get to the rest of our public hearing. Is Terry going to kick us off? Our friends from Breakthrough Montessori, your opportunity to join Terry at the table.
I'm Keith White-Scover, the board chair of Breakthrough Montessori.
I'm Vivek Swaminathan. I'm a parent and board member at Breakthrough.
I'm Rochelle Kimboko. I'm a board member.
And I'm Emily Hedin. I'm the Director of Family and Community Engagement.
And also Dell.
And I'm Terry Quinn, Senior Specialist on the Equity and Fidelity Team for the DC Public Charter School Board. This is a public hearing to discuss an amendment request submitted by Breakthrough Montessori Public Charter School to add a second facility in school year 2018-2019 at 6856 Eastern Avenue Northwest in Ward 4. Breakthrough Montessori's existing facility is also located in Ward 4 on Taylor Street Northwest. So if approved, the school plans to serve grades pre-K 3 through 1 at both facilities beginning next school year. And obviously, the representatives are here to answer any questions you may have.
Terry, just as a matter of public record, can you give us a sense of the process from here in terms of this vote?
So this is a public hearing for this evening just to discuss the details of the school's intended additional location. You'll vote on this matter next month.
Great. Thank you. We'd love to hear anything you'd like to share as we open the public hearing.
Emily, would you like to tell our enrollment numbers in the community? Yeah.
Good evening. So we, as you know, we have spent the first 2 years of our operations in the Taylor Street neighborhood in Petworth. And looking forward to Tacoma, we are happy to report that many of our currently enrolled families are not only willing but actually eager to move out in that direction with us. We just finished the lottery with over 700 applicants in general. About 350 of those were in Ward 4, so the ward in which the Tacoma campus is located. And specifically, we have 40 applicants from the immediate surrounding neighborhood. So we feel confident that not only are our currently enrolled families excited to move out there with us, but in the Tacoma neighborhood, we'll also find many families who are excited to be a part of our Montessori community.
We've also worked with the ANC for that area and have posted flyers in that neighborhood and have not received anyone who was against us moving into the spot. It's a former publishing warehouse, and it's just sitting vacant right now. It's just a big open space, but it's commercial.
Given that you have parents,
Yeah.
would you like to make any, I don't know which one of us that is, but would nonetheless love to hear from you.
I think parents are excited for the expansion and the growth opportunities for the school. We've seen that the improvements to the Taylor Street campus are indicative that we can scale appropriately for growth, and this is just the next chapter. Also, we felt that the way that the existing families were accommodated for the move was very smooth in that we could provide our preferences and work with Breakthrough staff to make sure that families with siblings, multiple children, or that were in close proximity to either facility were accommodated.
So how many additional slots will you have next year in this new facility, and will it be for all the grades?
So our growth program is in our charter, is that we add 45 new students per year, and we add a grade to the program. So this year we were serving pre-K3 through kindergarten. Next year we'll add a first grade. The 45 slots are for new 3-year-olds, but we also, we know that there will be attrition in the other grades, and we will backfill to include that.
Can you describe the outdoor play space at the new facility?
The play space, we have a small play space adjacent to the building, and the plan is to have sort of a natural style playscape located there, and it's mostly will serve our younger children. There is a park that is. One time I knew the exact mileage. I should still know that, but it's very close. It's an easy walk for older children, and we'll be using that facility as well.
Do you have a sense of what proportion of your parents are driving their children in a car to the facility? I'm just wondering how accessible this would be for anyone that's on public transportation or some other means of getting to the school.
Well, I do know that the new location is very close to the Tacoma Metro stop, a short walk away. 4-minute walk. I don't know how many are driving currently. It's a substantial number.
All right. And are the majority of your parents already living in Ward 4? Do you have that information?
So yes, we do have students who come from all 8 wards of DC, but the most kind of robustly represented ward is Ward 4. It's not a majority, but it's a plurality of students.
Okay, thank you. So there's no concerns about the folks that live elsewhere getting to that location on Eastern Avenue?
I mean, certainly, like as a school of choice, we draw families from all over, and families who joined us in year 1 accommodated a commute to Taylor Street. And at the time that we opened, we didn't know our permanent facility would be in Tacoma. So we do have some families who are looking at a commute that is impacted by this move. But we have started working with those families very early on to just figure out ways that we can support them the best as possible so that Breakthrough remains a viable option for them.
How might this impact staff who'll be working across both facilities, at both facilities at different times? How will this impact staff, or will it impact staff?
Sure. So staff retention was a top priority. So for the next 3 years, we are operating on both campuses. And so the top priority is making sure that our classroom faculty, we're keeping that classroom on the campus that works best for them, with the understanding that we are eventually all moving over to Tacoma. So we're really excited to say that informally, all of our teaching staff have indicated that we plan to return next year. We haven't done the official contract process yet, but we have gotten indicators from all of our teaching staff that they are eager to stay on board for year 3. So we are not at this point worried that the change in location is going to lead to staff, either faculty or administration, having to leave the school.
I want to add one other thing, that Montessori programs have a 3-year age cycle, so there's the primary program, which is for ages 3 to 6, and then the lower elementary program. And that will be our situation for the years while we're transitioning to Tacoma. And we've arranged it so that both locations have both a primary and elementary program. So for those families that have siblings, they can go to one class.
And would you be adding staff for the second location or to compensate for the first location?
Well, our growth model is that we will have 3 new classrooms next year. So we'll be hiring those. And the year after we'll have 2 additional classrooms. So eventually we'll have 5 lower elementary classrooms.
And just one final question from me, and I don't know if there are any others. Last month you were here before us, and we talked about some issues of noncompliance. Could you just give us an update on how those are continue to be resolved, hopefully?
We have hired, we have a board member, and we are now in compliance with 9 board members. That was submitted to PCSB staff, and I think we're now in compliance.
Great. And we also talked about response time on certain queries that we had, and does that feel like that's getting better as well? I
I think we understand what the issue was, and we've taken steps to correct it.
Okay, that's great. Yes? No? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm Aaron Cuny, CEO and co-founder. Jennifer Hansen, Chief Learning Center.
Peter Wayne, board two.
And I'm Will Stetzer, I'm the Chief Operating Officer.
Thank you.
And I'm Terry Penn, once again, Senior Specialist for the Public Charter School Board. This is a public hearing to discuss an amendment request submitted by Ingenuity Prep Public Charter School for an enrollment ceiling increase of 38 students, which amounts to a 5% growth. Ingenuity Prep would like to decrease its class sizes and grades pre-determined 3 through 7, while offering more classes in those same grades. The school wishes to reconfigure its grades as part of its strategy to improve academic results, reduce suspensions, and improve culture.
And representatives are here to answer any questions. And similarly, you will be voting on this next month.
Would you all like to start off by adding any additional color, any thoughts on your proposal?
Well, first, just thanks for the opportunity to be here. As Terry mentioned, we are looking to reduce class size. Actually, it's kindergarten through 2nd grade. Right now, we have a class size of 24 in our pre-K classrooms, and as we move into kindergarten, we have a pretty big jump, the same class size that we have, for example, in our 4th grade classrooms. And so as we think about building even stronger culture in our early elementary program, we'd like to create a greater scaffold from pre-K into the upper elementary program. And so increasing our overall enrollment as an organization will actually help us reduce class size in those grade levels.
So I have. Can you take us a little bit deeper into how that actually works? And a related question: how your facility supports your ability to do that?
Sure. Right now we have a lot that's actually going really well in our elementary model. So we have Jennifer can speak further to this if you'd like, but we have an elementary staffing model with multiple highly qualified teachers in each classroom. And we have content specialized teachers. And so we would like to be able to keep that. And were we to only reduce class size and not actually increase the number of classrooms, we would not have the economies of scale to be able to still sustain the teacher model that we want. And so increasing the overall enrollment in the organization allows us to get some economies of scale and allows us to maintain the best of what is still working in our teacher staffing model.
Sure. Sure. So, oh.
Yes. Hi, Darren.
Hey, how you doing? Can you talk a little bit more? I noted that you anticipate the increase sense with your culture and with reducing suspension. Can you just speak to what you anticipate happening if this is approved?
Sure. From an outcomes standpoint? Yeah, so we, as we have from year one, we have constantly worked really hard to build strong culture in our classrooms, and I think you all may have noted that one metric that we look at as we think about culture in our building is the suspension rate, and so we've had a pretty significant drop on that front this year, and that has come from continuing to work to build really strong Tier 1 culture in our classrooms. We've had some strong success with teacher retention over the last couple of years, and so we know that the better the teachers we have, the more likely that culture is to be strong in the classroom, and that has an impact on things like suspension rate. We've added a culture coordinator. We've added some behavior support staff who have helped provide some additional capacity for instances when kids need to take some time out of the classroom but maybe aren't in a position where they need to be sent home. And so we've seen success over the course of this year on that front, and I think as we look at the early elementary grade levels, we think that reducing the number of kids in each classroom is going to put our teachers in an even better position to build relationships with students, to build relationships with family, and to build even stronger community in the classroom. It is not a small task, but easier to build a strong kindergarten classroom community with 24 students than it is with 32 students. And so we know the stronger that those relationships are with kids and families, the stronger that sense of community, the more likely culture overall will be stronger, and the fewer instances we'll see of students who are really who are engaging in some of the more egregious behavior that could lead to a suspension.
And their academic outcomes.
You want to talk to this, Jennifer?
Sure. As we think about academic outcomes, we could take a content area such as guided reading. Currently, in our model, we may have 6 to 7 kids in a guided reading group. With a reduced class size, we hope to be able to have no more than 4 students. And so as we think about small group differentiated instruction based on the performance of our students on our literacy and math assessments, we hope to be able to target the specific needs of the students that are in front of us. And we can do that better the smaller the group in front of us.
I know, Rick. Go ahead, Darren.
Sorry about that. I'm just curious, and the number you're proposing to go down to in the pre-K grades, 24, is that correct?
So we currently have class size of 24 in pre-K, and right now there's a jump from pre-K 4 where the class size is 24 to kindergarten where the class size is 32, and so we're looking to create a little more of a scaffold, so it would go from 24 in pre-K to 24 in kindergarten, 26 in first and second grade, and then eventually closer to 30 and 32 as we get into the upper elementary grade levels.
Right, and I was just curious, are the numbers that you're anticipating getting down to the impact that you hope to see, is that based on just your own experience in running your school, or is there a research basis to those particular numbers, or how did you arrive at those numbers? Is what I'm trying to.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily coming from a research base, but more from I think because we have smaller class size in pre-K. And a similar teacher-student ratio, there's been an opportunity for us to see what works on that front, and so it's been our kind of lived experience over the last 5 years that has helped us identify what we think would be the right number.
Okay, and I'm asking mainly because I think if it has the desired outcomes that you're describing, it would be great for those kind of numbers to be shared with our other schools that are serving similar populations, so that they can sort of get ahead of any particular behavioral or cultural issues that they're hoping to address. So I'll be looking forward to seeing how this plays out.
Sounds good. And I think, Rick, you asked a question about the facility space as well.
Sure. So part of the reason we're bringing this to the board right now is because of the facilities question. So our request isn't actually for an increase next year. It's for 2 years down the road, and that's largely driven because where the facility we're in right now is in the process of undergoing a major renovation, and we're in a Building Hope incubator site. And so partnering with Building Hope, we're redoing the entire facility, adding windows. If you've ever been to our building, you know it doesn't have windows. And so we're doing a lot of those improvements. And so part of wanting to do that well, which is planned to open in the 1920 school year, is knowing how many class sizes we need at sort of end state in K2. So part of the reason we're coming before you now is for planning purposes for that facility. And the facility is very large. It's about 300,000 square feet, and there's about 100,000 square feet left to be able to take on. We don't need all of that. So it's readily able to accommodate more space or more classrooms. Frankly, would just sit unutilized if we didn't. So.
Peter, I know you were so good about attending all of these meetings where these guys and others from the team are talking about your plans and what you need from us. I don't know if you'd want to add anything tonight.
One of the joys of being board chair is as I serve and support great people, so they've answered everything. Nothing in addition. I do think that from the board standpoint, our board, we have been keenly focused both on the culture issues, how school culture is at the school, and also obviously on academic achievement. And I know I personally and all my fellow board members really were thrilled with this proposal that Aaron, Will, Jennifer, and the team came up with, and think it's, we think it's a strong proposal. And as Will said, the timing is really important now because we are laying out this building of the future right now, and it's going to be an exciting building. And so to be able to do this, I think will really help catapult us to the next level. So we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? All right, we'll be voting on this next month. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Rashida Young.
Okay. Hello, I'm Rashida Young, Senior Manager of the Equity and Fidelity Team. This is a public hearing for 3 graduation-related policies. There is one new policy, the credit recovery policy, and modifications to 2 existing policies, the transcript audit policy and high school graduation requirements approval policy. These policies clarify DC PCSB's standards for high school graduation requirements, explain the documents we require schools to provide to verify transcripts, and describe criteria for schools' credit recovery programs. We have received 3 public comments. 2 comments proposed the policies be implemented beginning school year 2018-2019, and 1 comment proposed adding language to clarify that DC PCSB has the authority to approve school graduation requirements, that authority is with PCSB and not the State Board of Ed. These policies are scheduled to be voted on at the April board meeting. And I do want to clarify that for the public comments that were submitted about the timing of the policies, that it appeared to be a preference for the high school graduation policies and the materials that would be required when schools were waiving particular credits, and not necessarily the transcript audit policy, which the changes that we're suggesting with that policy are largely being implemented this transcript audit season.
So just to share some context for those who may not be following this as closely, the graduation policies that we as the Public Charter School Board have been following for the last several years withstood the scrutiny that was rightly placed on all of our DC graduation policies across the city by OSSI and external parties.
Yes.
These are refinements that they suggested that could make policy stronger, largely, almost all of which we agreed with.
Right. Correct. And particularly for the transcript audit policy, many of the suggestions that were made and the changes that we put into the policy in practice we were already doing them, but it simply wasn't codified. So many of those changes are now simply within the policy, so it's more transparent for schools and other stakeholders.
Other board members, any questions? Darren, the voice. I keep looking up to the right for you, Darren. That's where I think you are. Naomi?
No questions for me.
Excellent. Okay. So this will be up for vote next month.
Next month, yes. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Naomi and Katie, or Katie both? Two? All of you?
Good afternoon, or good evening. I'm Naomi DeVoe. I'm the Deputy Director of the Public Charter School Board.
Hi, I'm Katie Damon. I'm manager on the Equity and Fidelity team.
And we are jointly here today to bring into discussion a public hearing to discuss the revisions to the procurement, contract submissions, and conflicting interest policy, which was open for public comment on February 26th. And we have received some public comment to date, which will be presented to the board and discussed publicly prior to the vote, although you can ask us questions tonight. And that staff has been working with school task force to propose revisions to the policy, and the revised policy adds definitions for relevant terminology, clarifies expectations for bidding and submitting contracts, and explains consequences for late or incomplete submissions. So Katie Damon here and I are here to answer any questions.
This is the relatively unsexy stuff that is unbelievably and incredibly important. So I appreciate you guys bringing this level of detail and scrutiny to these policies. If you could provide maybe a little bit of additional context on the balance of the public comment that we're getting, so that we're prepped to dig in even deeper as it comes closer to vote.
Sure. So I would say that one kind of area of public comment that we have been getting is from our larger LEAs to consider implementing this policy differently based on size, essentially scaling the requirements and considering different time thresholds for LEAs that have many more contracts than others. So that's something that has been submitted. Another suggestion is to, I think, reduce what some schools see as kind of overly burdensome requirements for approving contracts and have an expectation that rather than require that a school's board approve every procurement contract, that the school be able to develop and implement an approval policy that would be approved in its bylaws that may not require board approval, but that may move through staff steps. So those are the two, I think, major areas that we have heard from our LEAs.
And remind us how LEAs have been engaged on this as well. You mentioned the task force, just to be clear on the type of discussion that's happened around that.
So this has been our finance committee task force of mostly finance people from charter schools. I'd say that I've attended the last two. We held two this fall to discuss, and there were about maybe 20 to 25 LEAs present at both of those meetings, where we went through the revisions and gathered feedback at that point. One of the things to talk about with sort of the timeline is we're actually following the School Reform Act, so there isn't a whole lot of, we would love to give longer. With the way we are addressing the very quick 10-day turnaround is actually not requiring the contracts themselves, which is something that was in the policy before, but rather saying, because the law does not require us to review those contracts, but rather the bidding process. What we're really looking for are the charters bidding this publicly, and are they notifying it publicly? And so we're looking for evidence of that, asking for that to be quickly submitted, and then only when we're seeing a very, very large amount of money going to a vendor or something out of the ordinary would we then ask for follow-up to see the contract itself. This has changed from what we currently ask for, which is the actual contract.
You'll also see that there is an attachment to attachment B to your policy in your board materials that lays out some of the various requests that we were responsive to when working with the task force.
More on this at future meetings. Thank you. All right, that brings to a close our public hearing. So we'll want to get started with our public meeting. And to start with, I'm going to ask for a vote to approve the agenda. But in order to do so, we need to make a few amendments. So we need to amend our agenda to remove two items, to remove two items, voting on the opening revisions to the elect to adopt the PMF as goals policy, and to strike DC bilingual from the consent calendar. And we'll want to do those to allow staff, in particular on the first one, to allow staff more time to work with the Adult Education Task Force on the proposed revision. So taking off the elect to adopt the PMF as goals policy for public comment, and then to strike DC bilingual from the consent calendar. Can I get a motion with both of those revisions?
I move to remove from the March 19th, 2018 board meeting agenda voting to open the PMF as goals policy and to strike DC bilingual from the consent calendar.
Can I have a second? All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you, Darren. All right. Can I get a second motion on the approval of the agenda?
I move to approve the March 19th, 2018 board meeting agenda as amended.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you. And I should note I have proxy votes from Saba Bugreda, Don Soifer, and Steve Bumbaugh as well. All right, so to our consent calendar. This is the portion of the meeting where we read into record administrative contracts and dispose of a handful of smaller items being adjusted in the charter amendments. So if I could get a motion, we've got lots of motions to start off the meeting. Motion on the administrative contracts.
I move to read into record the administrative contracts over $25,000.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Excellent. And then a motion, please, on the charter amendments listed.
I move to approve the charter amendment requests of Inspired Teaching PCS, Mary McLeod Bethune PCS, Roots PCS, and E.L. Haynes, and approve the DC PCSB board chair to sign the amendments on behalf of the board.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Now we can get a break from motions, and we're going to open for or vote on opening for public comment, enrollment ceiling increase policy revision. Rashida Young, if you'd return to the table.
Okay, hello again. Our staff requests that you vote to open for public comment revisions to the enrollment ceiling increase policy, which will remain open until the date of the public hearing, currently scheduled for April 23rd, with a vote on May 21st. We have revised the policy to clarify standards the board will consider when determining whether a school will be granted an enrollment increase, and to ensure the board's practices and the policy are aligned. New criteria introduced into the policy includes standards for community engagement, subgroup performance, or growth on the state assessment, and exclusionary discipline. We have sought school leader and community feedback via the Charter Leaders Meeting, School Leader Task Force meetings, and Parent Alumni Leadership Council meeting, and will continue gathering feedback during the public comment period.
Excellent. So we're definitely, I know that there's been a lot of engagement of LEAs across the last several months through the task force.
Yes.
Thank you to Darren Woodruff and Steve Bumbaugh, who joined me as board members on that, and to our entire board who's engaged in the conversation. To start with, can you give us a little bit more of a detailed sense for the record of the process up until now, and what we anticipate the process looking like between now and when you ask the board to vote on the final policy.
Sure. So we first introduced it to schools, not introducing the new policy, but opening the conversation to get their feedback at the charter school leaders meeting held in September of this school year. At that meeting, we talked about pieces of the policy that schools may have questions or concerns about, and it was just a general opening of the conversation. Following that meeting, we sent out a survey for any school that wished to answer questions on their preferences. Which parts of the current policy do they feel could be tweaked, should be tweaked? Are there any new criteria that we should be considering as we revise the policy? In addition, we met with the Parent and Alumni Leadership Council in October. There were about 10 parents in attendance. We talked about the current policy, asked them their opinion on what could be improved, all the while taking notes on their feedback as well. We had 2 task force meetings with schools, one in November and another in January, where we provided updates to a draft proposal, or I'm sorry, a draft policy, and asked their feedback. At both of the meetings, they had questions, schools had various questions about data and asked for us to review data in different ways to see what the impact would be on various schools, which we have run some of these analyses and shared data with the schools to show how some of the criteria, which schools would pass or fail per se, certain criteria. And we have scheduled a 3rd task force meeting for this upcoming Wednesday.
Well, again, I want to thank members of staff. I know this has been a many-month process just getting to this point of getting LEA and other stakeholder feedback. So again, this is something that we're voting today to open for public comment. We'll be meeting on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to joining those members of the LEAs who will be joining us on Wednesday. And we'll be looking to next couple of months of discussion on this policy.
Great.
So, with that, I have a motion to open this for public comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, this is Darren. I just before we take a vote, I just wanted to echo your thanks and appreciation, particularly to staff. I think there's been a lot of strong opinions already put forward on this enrollment ceiling increase policy, so we're very much looking forward to hearing from the public. But I just wanted to express appreciation, particularly to Rashida Young and Naomi Rubin DeVoe, on the really good work they've done in getting this to the point where it is now. And I think it'll just get better as we hear from the public. So as part of the board member committee, just want to express my thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Darren. All right. Motion?
I move to open for public comment the enrollment ceiling increase policy revision.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Great. Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you, Rashida.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll move on to policy revisions. Oh, I'm sorry. And in relationship to the opening of the ECI policy revision, we also have proxy votes in favor of opening for public comment from Saba Bureda, Don Soifer, and Steve Bumba. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Erin Kupferberg, Senior Manager for the Academic Evaluation Team. I would like the board to vote to approve tonight the revisions to the 2017-18 Performance Management Framework, or PMF Policy and Technical Guide. While the board approved the guide in September 2017, Once we received the 2016-17 data, we saw a greater negative impact on all schools than expected, with the average school losing 1.9 points. Staff held a meeting with the Pre-K to 8 PMF Task Force to discuss options, and the task force voted by an 87.5% majority to use the 2016-17 weights and business rules for achievement and to use the 2016-17 floors and targets for attendance and re-enrollment to maintain a stable framework. The proposed revisions cause the average school score to stay the same. Additionally, there are 2 corrections in the adult education portion of the technical guide to clarify that a student must pre-test and post-test in the same subject to count for student progress participation rate, and to align retention with student progress when a GED subject test can be taken for the post-test. We have only received 1 public comment for this policy revision, and that was at the public hearing in support of the changes to the Pre-K to 8 framework. No additional public comments have been received.
So we had an opportunity to ask questions last time as well. So first of all, I'd like to express my appreciation for the staff being so responsive to the feedback that we've gotten from the LEAs about what this the former previous policy would have created in terms of the accountability structure. Remind me how we're going to approach this for 2018, 2019, because we find ourselves very close to needing to move forward with that as well, and that's a summertime exercise.
Oh, that process has begun. After that January task force meeting, school leaders nominated some very strong data folks at their own schools to help and become part of a Pre-K to 8 working group. That working group started meeting immediately and has met every other week to work on proposed revisions that we're going to talk with the full task force about in April. So we're working on looking at the entire framework, not everything changing for 2018-19, but making sure that the framework remains strong and stable as we do look at some minor adjustments for next year. So the 2018-19 PMF policy and technical guide will be open. We're aiming to open for public comment again in May on our normal cycle.
And given the changes that we needed to make this year, how do we anticipate being able to do the analysis necessary to not find ourselves in the same position?
We are trying to work with a broader set of data, and we're looking at multiple years of impact analysis so that we can not find ourselves in the same position this year. And we are working, again, with a broader group of data managers to help discuss all of the implications of the changes. And coming up with a set of business rules, or not business rules, but impact policies to say when we think a provision, when a recommendation would be strong to the task force, that it won't have this variability year to year.
Excellent. Thank you. If there, Darren, any questions? Give you the opportunity.
Nope, nothing for me. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, then, if I could have a motion on the 2017-18 PMF policy and technical guide revision.
I move to approve the 2017-18 PMF policy and technical guide revision.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we also have an aye from Saba Bereda and from Steve Bumbaugh, and no vote from Don Seufert.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and thanks again for all the work on this. All right, next is DC Bilingual, Terry.
Hello, my name is Alina Tuyere and I'm the principal of the school.
Hello, I'm Daniela Anello and I'm head of school.
Hi,
Hi, Rohini Ramnath, Director of Data and Accountability.
Susan Rosenbaum, Board Chair.
DC PCSB staff recommends that you approve the amendment request submitted by DC Bilingual Public Charter School and approve DC PCSB's board chair to sign the amendment on its behalf. DC Bilingual requests an enrollment ceiling increase of 50 students from its current ceiling of 450 students to a new maximum enrollment of 500 students beginning next school year. A public hearing regarding this matter occurred last month, and we did not receive any public comment.
You can take a few moments to share with us some of the rationale behind this, remind us before we take this to vote.
Yes. So currently we have a ceiling approval of 435 students for this current school year, and we're serving 440 students. So our initial request was in order to be approved to serve the number of students that we're currently serving, and in order to not be on the cusp of possibly having one or a few students that are not within our approval, we decided to put in an application request to give us a buffer of about 50 students and have an approval of 500 students.
And with that buffer, what are you anticipating, or what are you projecting in terms of that growth? So you're in a situation of more students than you anticipated. You'll have a bit of a buffer. Are there trend lines that suggest where you think you'll be in terms of enrollment in the next few years?
Absolutely. At no point will we ever go over 90% of the enrollment ceiling. So our absolute cap is right at 460 projected over time. And that's with really good re-enrollment rates.
Right. And facility-wise, always an interesting topic in terms of how your facility accommodates both what you project and then the full enrollment ceiling increase. So you can say a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. Our facility holds currently 502 students. Well, up to.
Darren, any questions for DC Bilingual?
Yes. Good evening, DC Bilingual. I am certainly in favor of your proposal, but I did want to take the opportunity to ask if you could give us a little information on, given that you're a immersion-focused program, how are you all currently doing with your English language learners? And I recognize that sort of across our sector that demographic tends to perform, at least on the PARC exam, at a lower level than a lot of the other groups. So I'm curious just to hear what are some of the strategies you're implementing, or how do you see as you grow your program meeting their academic goals more effectively?
Thank you for the opportunity. We actually take instruction very seriously. So I'm happy to talk a little bit about this. As a dual language school, 100% of our students are second language learners. And so when it comes to support teachers and staff in making sure that the classrooms and the students can access the language is something that is really important. Our data manager here has some data around ELL, because although we see that our ELL students are not performing at the same level as the rest of the school, we have some data that show growth and that also show student exiting the ELL program.
Okay. All right. So when we're talking about ELL and when PARC, we have to talk about it in context. So 2015, when we first took PARC, we had 68 students that identified as English language learners. This last year in 2017, we had 37 students. So we saw a strong number of students that were exited from the program because of excellent instruction. When you look at our ELL numbers in terms of proficiency, it may look like we're not making the same as our general education students. However, when you look at it within context, context, all cohorts that have an N size larger than 1 saw either an increase in ELA and Math PARC plus 4+ performance or stayed the same. So we're looking at smaller cohorts that are still learning and growing per year. When we look at our students and how they're performing and outside of the bubble, because when you look at ELL for the students who are identified as ELL, who was identified in 2017 versus 2015, it's a completely different number. But if we just took the 2015 students specifically, who were in 3rd grade at the time, identified as English language learners, and take that same group in 2017, the difference is pretty stark. So starting in 2015, the amount of students that were 4+ in ELA were 6.25% of the students. Now that same group of students, regardless of their status, in 2017, it was 68.75% of those students scored at 4+. So our students are growing, and it's not just in 4+, but 3+, ELA, Math, and 3+ and 4+. So we're seeing the growth that we want to see, but we're also seeing students exiting that identification, which we also want to see.
Right. So you're saying, as part of a function of being an English learner, once you progress to a certain point, you're removed from that designation because you're moved to a different category of student. Is that an accurate way of saying it?
Yes. So all of our students in K-5 that are identified as English language learners take something called the Access Test. And so that's a multi-domain test in speaking, listening, writing, and reading that you have to score a 5 or above in order to test out. However, just because you're not necessarily an English language learner doesn't mean we don't continue to give you targeted instruction, monitor your growth, and ensure that you're still continuing to learn. So our students, though they're not necessarily English language learners, they're still continuing to learn and develop their content in language.
Okay, that's very helpful. If you don't have the answer to this question right now, that's fine, but I'm wondering, do you think there's a better way to capture that progression of students that start out as English learners and then as they improve their performance in English and just academically in general, they're moved out of that designation? Is there a way for us to capture that? Because I think in looking at the data on not just your school, but schools that have English language learners in them, it's hard to see that progression from the data we typically look at.
I think that's a great question, and honestly, I don't have a specific answer right now because we have so many metrics of success in our school. We understand that Access only tests specific domains. It doesn't actually talk about the students' knowledge in the other contents that we teach, and so if we were to take the metrics that we use across all students, regardless of their status, we can talk about their progression from their first day in the school in kindergarten to their last day in school in 5th grade. We can talk about their growth because we look at growth over time. But in terms of identifying a metric that is the best possible metric for our students that need it the most, I couldn't say something definitively.
Well, we appreciate you coming and sharing a little bit more about that. This board is definitely interested in ELL students and student performance, and I think that we'll like to engage you as we continue to think both about how we can be improving as a sector, our ability to serve those students, and whether there is a measure that better captures that.
I think this is really important, and the question Darren raises is an important one that I would like our staff to dig into, because when we look at overall charter school performance versus DC public schools, we outperform DCPS with low-income students, we outperform DCPS with students of color or with black students, but we consistently underperform DCPS with English language learners. And after hearing your explanation, I wonder whether at least part of the explanation is that actually we're doing so well with our English language learners that we're graduating them out. Naomi doesn't agree with me, so
Yeah.
I'm dying to say something.
Sorry, this is Naomi DeVoe again. Sorry. I just want to correct the record about what we're talking about. We're pulling the numbers from OSSE's website, and these are the percent of students who are proficient, 4 or 5 on the PARC test, or the group that grew in MGP. Per the business rules on OSSE's website, they are students who exit out are kept in 2 years. Those are the monitored students after they've exited. So I just want to be very clear that it's not just the students that after they've exited, they are also in that cohort. So they are being included in the rates when we look at a school's percent proficient or their MGP, which is their growth for this subgroup for 2 years after exiting, which would include your third graders through 5th grade, even if they exited at the end of 3rd grade. So I do think that there's a lot to be looked at, and I think the access data is an area that we really should be digging into, but I did want to correct the record on the data that we are looking at. Thank you.
So further affirms that there's more for us to do and more conversations as we do want to continue to strengthen our approach to ELL. One last question. The growth in ELL at the school over the last couple of years as you all have moved into a larger facility, which I know you're very happy about, and grown as an LEA. What has that growth look like, and do you anticipate that staying the same or growing over the next few years?
For the yellow. So we're actually seeing the opposite. Right now, we see less and less students that join our school that are ELLs, and that's making us rethink also how we approach our SSL instruction, our Spanish as second language, because we used to be a school that had most of our population was Spanish-speaking families, and now we are seeing the reverse. And I think that, again, it continues to be an interesting challenge around language and how to develop bilingual students, but not necessarily maybe on the ELL side for our pre-K students.
Yeah, I just want to add that we have to look at our recruitment efforts and think about how we continue to be the place that every child that comes to our school gets the best education possible, while knowing full well that one of the skills we have is being able to support, English language learners, as well as other subgroups such as students with special needs and students at risk. I wanted to share one of a data piece that was shared with me recently by EdForward DC. As you know, they have a ton of data at their fingertips, and they recently selected us to be a part of a strategic planning project. And the reason they selected our school was because they considered us a unique and sought after model with a high performing school with strong special education and at-risk student performance. And the information they shared with us is that in looking at their portfolio of the schools that they have worked with, we in the ELA PARC 4+, 23% of our students are receiving the 4+ score that are considered special education students, whereas only 6% are at that percentage of all the schools in their portfolio, and there's also another 6% that are in that category citywide. Similarly, we see patterns in the at-risk category and special education category for Math PARC 4+. So the data that they've showed us is that subgroups, not just ELL, but special education and at-risk, are categories where our school has been seeing growth measures over time that demonstrate that we're above average in terms of what the citywide is scoring.
Seeing similar shifts in other populations like in ELL?
Yes. Again, it's whoever gets in, and we have noticed that in terms of special education, the percentage of students who are classified as special education students has significantly been getting smaller over time. Same with at risk. Can you?
I think what we've seen get smaller is definitely our free and reduced lunch percentage over time, and as each graduating class goes and a new class comes in, it does change. For example, it was 81% last year, and it's 68% this year, which is our most marked drop over time in the last 6 years. In terms of our at-risk percentage, it hovers right in the 30%, and our most significant ELL drop has been from 2015-2016 to 2016-2017, when we exited about 20% of the then identified students into monitored.
I'm very interested in this, in the drop in your at-risk students and your students who are native Spanish speakers. The school with PCSB's, at PCSB's initial prodding and with our support, separated itself from Centro Nia several years ago. And in many ways, I think that was a positive thing for the school. We certainly got much more visibility and transparency into your financials, which were quite intertangled with Centro Nia. But I wonder if you could comment on whether that separation may have hurt the school's ability to recruit and reach out to the populations that had traditionally been attending the school, particularly lower income families and families where Spanish was the first language.
So it's my opinion that those groups of families are still very much looking for our program as a school for their children. What's happened with the success that our school has had is that it's increased the demand for all of the parents of the district. So, for example, we currently have students that are representative of all 8 wards, whereas when we were in Centro Nia's building, it was more of Ward 3 families was the majority. We didn't have other. Was it Ward 3? Yeah, Ward 3. We didn't have necessarily the entire representation of all 8 wards. So I think that. Oh, sorry, Ward 1. That's what I meant. Ward 1. And this currently we have about 275 students applying from Ward 7 and Ward 8, and I think that's maybe the location is a little bit more accessible from those wards, or I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but I do feel confident that the Latino families are still very much in demand of our school and applying to enter our school and moving towards our school. Many of our families moved with the school to be in Ward 5. But like I said, I think it's just that our school has become more recognized with the success that it's had and with the location that it has. It's much more settled, and more people have noticed it, and more people have applied to attend it.
So knowing all of that, did you change your recruiting strategies in any way to adapt to this? What did you do?
Absolutely. In the past, we did very little to recruit families. We basically ran our school as normal. Families applied, and we accepted the matched families. Currently, we attend every single school fair that there is. There's a Ward 5 fair that we make sure to attend. There's a dual language school language project fair we make sure to attend. We have done a little canvassing. We have spent a lot of time just outside meeting neighbors and telling them about the school and why they should consider it for their school, for their students. We spend a lot of time with Mary Center next door, and that is really helpful because many of our families receive services from Mary Center or are a part of the BRIA program, and when their children in the pre-K classes are old enough to attend kindergarten, those are the families we're actively trying to have consider our school as a possible school for their child. So we are very thoughtful in our recruitment efforts, and we try to make sure to go after the families that we really want to have consider our school.
And the other thing I think is this idea of educating and supporting families to understand the lottery process, because we see a lot of families having a hard time filling the lottery online. So providing with school hours for people to come and our office staff to support them through the registration process. as well as supporting it with the deadlines. That's something that we see a lot of families maybe coming into our school mid-year and saying, I want to register my kid into your school, and not understanding how the lottery process works. And I think that there's a lot to be done around educating all families so they can access the lottery the same way that maybe more educated families can do.
And what's your current wait list number?
Our current for the 17-18 year or for 18-19?
Well, both.
So 17-18, we were looking at over 1,600, and currently, I don't think we have the numbers yet. Applicants. 1,945 for 18-19.
And for how many seats?
Not a lot.
Yeah.
A handful, maybe?
Yeah. Wow. Well. Thank you for continuing in this conversation. As you can tell, there's a lot of energy around this, and we'll look and appreciate you coming armed with additional analysis to help us continue to think through this particular issue. So very much appreciate that. Can I get a motion?
I move to. Go ahead. I move to approve DC Bilingual Public Charter Schools Charter Agreement Amendment Request for an enrollment ceiling increase, and approve the DC PCSB Board Chair to sign the amendment on the board's behalf.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. And also ayes from Saba Barreda, Don Soifer, and Steve Bumbau. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Rashida Young, return performance. And Goodwill Excel Academy.
Okay, hello again. Our staff requests that you vote to issue a notice of concern to Goodwill Excel Public Charter School for its truancy rate of 74.2%, which surpasses the threshold of our board's truancy policy, which is 45% for alternative schools. If the board votes to issue the notice of concern, we recommend the notice be lifted at the May 2018 board meeting, pending improvement in 2 out of the 3 following criteria. 1, improvement in the percentage of in-seat attendance for the whole school. 2, improvement in attendance for the majority of students who were defined as chronically truant in the baseline period. And 3, maintaining a chronic truancy rate lower than 45%, excluding those already counted as chronically truant in the baseline period. The school is here to answer your questions.
Thank you. If you'd each introduce yourself.
Yes. Good evening. I'm Catherine Malloy, President and CEO of Goodwill of the Excel Center. And I'll just introduce so I can make sure that everybody, Colleen Paletta is our Vice President of Mission Services. Behind me is Vershawn Terry, and Vershawn is the Manager of Special Education. And also Latia Talafiero, who is our lead academic success coach. And then the person behind all of them is Scott Bess, who is he is actually the founder of the Excel Centers in Indianapolis and is on our board. And tomorrow we have a board meeting, and so we invited him to come tonight to introduce him first of all, but also to be a part of this hearing. And so I'll give just a little bit of a backdrop, and then I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Colleen. So as Rashida had said, the Excel Center is an alternative charter high school, and it opened last year. And its mission is to serve individuals who have dropped out of high school and to have them to return to a high school to receive a full diploma. Over the school year, we operate 5 8-week classes, 8 weeks terms. And the school operates from Monday through Thursday from 9:30 a.m. to 5:30, and then on Fridays, we have that as a day for an opportunity for additional instruction, counseling for the students. We predominantly serve students who are over the age of 18. And we are here tonight to speak about those students, though, who are under the age of 18, who make up less than about 10% of our student population. And what I think is important is for us, to first of all say we understand the need to address this, first of all, but also how important it is for the students who are under 18 years. And so Colleen is going to actually go step by step on the things that we are currently doing and will be doing in order to make this ratio, or this rate, be favorable for those 18-year-olds and younger.
Thank you. Okay. Well, good evening. I just wanted to go through several things and steps we're going to be taking moving forward to make sure that we address where we are with this area. I've spent a lot of time over the last couple weeks really looking at our attendance data and our practices and where we are today. And as a result, we've come up with several steps we will be taking, we are taking, and will continue to be taking over the next couple months. So as Catherine mentioned, we have 5 8-week terms over the course of a school year. We are currently in the second week of our 4th term of this academic school year. We are looking at every single student who is under the age of 18, what their plan is, what has been done, and what needs to be taking place for every student to make sure that they are appropriately engaged and supported in their academic journey at the Goodwill Excel Center. Secondly, every single day, our academic success coaching team will be looking at all of our students that have unexcused absences to make sure that we are responding with the appropriate intervention depending with the number of unexcused absences that a student may have. This may include, depending on where we're at, phone call home. It may include a behavior intervention planning meeting with the parent, referral to our student support team, and letters home to parents, and then referral to court services. Thirdly, our coaches will drill down and understand if the absence is due to missing an entire day of school or if perhaps they've missed a portion of the school day, which is something we found is the case for many of these students. If the absence is due to missing one class, then or arriving late, then we need to understand why they're missing that class and appropriately intervene. One thing that we've done, our school year is broken up into 5 8-week academic terms. And when we look at attendance, oftentimes we look at it term by term, and we look at interventions term by term, as opposed to the whole school year. And so someone may not be doing well in a term and then have accumulated a lot of unexcused absences, but are returning and re-engaging and refreshing and restarting through one of our terms. Next, we are expanding our staff capacity. We have learned the needs of our under 18 students are different than the majority of our students who are over 18. We are adding a youth services coach that will be 100% focused on this population, their needs, their academic progress, their attendance, their outreach to parents or guardians, and the different compliance responsibilities that these students have. Last 2 things. Number 1, in December, we hired a full-time school psychologist. Many of our students who are under 18, who are experiencing attendance problems, are due to a wide variety of issues. And our school psychologist will be there on site to help address some of these concerns where before we were contracting out the service. And in general, just engaging our parents and guardians through the very beginning through our IXL orientation. We had this past orientation a week and a half ago where we were really welcoming and encouraging our parents to actually come, sit in on orientation, and then to meet one-on-one with our staff to really make sure people understand our model, our program, and how we are truly different than other traditional non-alternative schools. In general, our attendance rate for our entire school has been something we've been closely monitoring. Over the last couple of months, it has steadily improved and increased. And we expect that to continue to steadily increase over the coming months. But we have been moving in a positive direction. So those are some things that we are doing.
And did anyone else want to chime in with?
No, I mean, we've got our lead academic success coach and our manager of special education are here. If you had more specific questions, we welcome them so that you can understand how we're addressing this.
Well, thank you. First question that I have would be related to when students disengage and then re-engage in another one of the following terms.
Yep.
Are you determining what are some of the common reasons why the students disengage?
Yes. You know what? I'm going to actually pass that off because I think Latia, who's our lead academic success coach, can help bring life to that.
Hello. Hello. Okay. So yes, usually some of the barriers are just kind of low motivation for school in general. It could be at-home instability. Sometimes it's just challenges around just different services that a student does not have based on maybe a previous negative experience in school. And they bring the mindset thinking that they're not going to have that wraparound support in school. And so sometimes they don't even walk through the door. So sometimes our task initially is just trying to get them through the door so that they can have a corrective educational experience.
And I had the opportunity to visit one of your schools in Indianapolis and hearing about some of the culture that they are very prescriptive about, or very, not prescriptive, but very thoughtful. In terms of creating and starting that culture from the beginning, as far as an orientation or anything of that nature, can you walk us through, once you do have the students there, what does that process look like?
So what we just started in our Term 4 IXL is being more intentional and deliberate about having a guardian or a parent come to orientation with that student. And so that way it gives us more motivation to get the student through the door, whether that is a parent, a guardian, a social worker, a family member, just to have them come in. And then they go through the IXL process, which is just an orientation of our school. We set the standard, the expectation. We welcome and encourage parents to be a part of their educational experience. And then once they do the orientation, they come into the first day of the term. And even in that first day of the term, it's still an opportunity throughout the term to have touch points of engagement with the students on a daily basis when they come through, but also with the parent, the guardian, or any other support that they bring in by having either team meetings to support the student in that educational process.
What kind of engagement did you see at that kickoff session?
We actually saw very positive engagement. We had a lot of students to report to orientation actually we made it mandatory that the students report to orientation with a guardian or a parent, and actually most of them, a large number of them, showed up with the parent, the guardian, and engaged through the entire orientation process. And we were very surprised and very appreciative of that level of support.
So then what are the follow-on touch points with those parents and guardians who came to the kickoff?
I didn't hear.
What are the follow-ups with those parents and guardians throughout the term?
So the follow-ups with the parents and guardian, it depends on the student, but what that looks like is just really keeping the parent in the loop. So what I usually do is encourage my team, the academic coaching team, to have weekly interaction with the student, but also to give that parent or guardian an update about the student's progress.
So I have it here that 10% that these students represent are about 31 students, or that's the denominator we're working from. How does that compare both to last year, what you think the school will be serving to the extent that you can make those projections, and then would love to hear how it compares to the larger network of Goodwill Excel charter schools.
I can speak to the first one, and I'll try to answer anecdotally what I know on the second end. When we looked at our data for the total number of students under 18 that enrolled last year versus this year, just looking at, we are about on par year to date as we were last year. So there's a slight uptick if we were to sort of trend out. We have one more term where we will enroll new students in May. And so we're seeing a slight uptake. Anecdotally, one of the conversations in our team meetings are
we're getting a lot more phone calls from students, from case managers, from individuals who are under 18, interested in learning more about the Goodwill Excel Center. That really started, I would say, in the fall, and that is what that anecdotal evidence coupled with phone calls we were getting is really what triggered, and we said, okay, we really need another person who's focused specifically on this population. And we are board approved adding that position, and we've been recruiting to fill it. And with regarding your second point, in terms of the other Goodwill Excel Centers, I think we're similar. I don't have the specific data in front of me, but he's saying thumbs up, which means that our data is pretty consistent in terms of the number and the overall percentage. Our main age at the Goodwill Excel Center is a early 20s to late 30s. 75% are females, and many of whom are parenting.
I was just curious about the collaboration with other schools where you're getting students from other schools who are coming your way.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we need to do additional outreach now that we've seen more. We see individuals. It's not just the schools, but it's also DYRS. I can think of this last orientation where we had some case managers that are actually accompanying our youth at orientation. And then what we're trying to do is to be more intentional in getting those names of those case managers so our academic success coach can be collaborating intentionally if there's a situation where a student's not coming to school or we're trying to identify where they are. So I would say there. I don't know if you want to add anything. No? Yeah. But being more intentional about figuring out where they came from and any points of contact is something that we're working on as well.
Having visited last year and seen even in your first year how you responded to some of the things that you were prepared for a lot of things, but some things you got surprised by. Would you say the truancy concern with regard to these 31 under 18s surprised you this year? Because I appreciate the list of things that you're doing to remedy it. I'm just wondering if you could have anticipated some of these challenges earlier in the year.
Certainly, we could definitely we always try to anticipate and stay ahead of the challenges that are coming at us, especially as a second year school. I think that when we started to see and recognize that this was potentially growing into a larger issue since we had more students, that's where, knowing that we needed to add staff capacity, we acted and moved as quickly as we could and have been engaging, recruiting rather, to find someone to come in. But it definitely is a little bit higher than I think we anticipated.
Rick, I'd love to go ahead and add to that. We started the school as an adult school, and so you set it up, obviously, for those over 18 years old. What I am amazed about is that many of the 18-year-olds are coming from even their families have gone to the school, their grandmothers have gone to the school, they're trying to engage people to come to the school, and they've also heard about the school from others. And so that influx now, I will say, is greater than we thought from the very beginning. I mean, we really anticipated this to be an 18-plus school. So having even 10%, I think is, I know it is a greater percentage than we originally thought. But you know what? They're coming. And they've dropped out of school, and they're looking for a diploma, and they're looking for us to give them the opportunity to achieve that diploma. So we need to go ahead and address their issues and approach them from the manner of which they should be approached, which is with dignity to receive a diploma at our school.
So I'll just say for myself, I'm going to vote in support of the notice of concern. I don't want you at all to take that as a sign that we don't support the work that you're doing. I'm looking forward. It just so happens I'll be visiting on Thursday, so I'm looking forward to that. Rashida, could you just remind us, especially because this is their first notice of concern and
Sure.
hopefully their last, how the process works?
Sure. So, if this is voted to receive the notice of concern, I would reach out to you this week and just give kind of a rough process of our data manager will pull the data 2 months from now, and you're welcome to talk with her anytime in the interim to ask how things are going. We can go over the specific improvements, and again, it's 2 out of the 3. Improvement in seat attendance, truancy, or maintaining an overall chronic truancy rate under 45%. So there can be several conversations in this interim, but again, it's something that could be lifted at the May meeting if we see that improvement.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, it's time for us to vote. Can I get a motion? Someone?
I move to issue a notice of concern to Goodwill Excel Academy Public Charter School for surpassing the truancy threshold in DC PCSB's truancy policy.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'll note
Did we
that-
get a second on that one?
Oh, we did.
I second.
My mic was
Sorry,
off.
no,
I
Naomi
did
seconded
second.
that. So we have a motion by Ricarda, second by Naomi, 4 votes in favor, and then also via proxy, Saba Beretta, Don Soifer, Steve Bumbau. We look forward to seeing you across the next couple of months. Thank you. Tanya Nesson and our charter reviews.
Let's see, can I have Carlos Rosario come up first?
Okay, we're going to start
Lot
with
of
Carlos
chairs for you.
Rosario.
Anyone else? All right, hi. All right. Good evening. My name is Tanya Nesson, and I am on the School Quality and Accountability team. Tonight, the board will vote on whether to continue 3 public charter schools. I'll read the charter review standard once, and it will apply to all 3 reviews. The charter review standard is as follows. The School Reform Act is the law that governs public charter schools. It states that the DC Public Charter School Board shall review a school's charter at least once every 5 years. As part of this review, we must determine whether the school committed a material violation of applicable laws or a material violation of the conditions, terms, standards, or procedures set forth in its charter, including violations relating to the education of children with disabilities and/or the school failed to meet the goals and student academic achievement expectations set forth in its charter. If DC PCSB determines that a school has committed a material violation of applicable law or of its charter, or has not met its goals and academic achievement expectations, DC PCSB may, at its discretion, grant the school a continuance or revoke the school's charter. Additionally, there is a fiscal component to the charter review. We are required to revoke a school's charter if we determine that the school, number 1, has engaged in a pattern of non-adherence to a generally accepted accounting principles, 2, has engaged in a pattern of fiscal mismanagement, and/or 3, is no longer economically viable. So our first school up today is Carlos Rosario. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Good evening. I'm Allison Kokoro, CEO of the Carlos Rosario International Public Charter School. It's very good to be here tonight, and I'm here with my colleagues, Dr. Ryan Monroe, our Chief Academic Officer, and Patricio Sanchez, our Accountability Director, and behind me is Jerry Luna, our Chief Financial Officer. It's good to be here.
Thank you.
DC PCSB conducted a 20-year charter review of Carlos Rosario Public Charter School according to the standard required by the School Reform Act. Carlos Rosario PCS originated in 1970 as the Program of English Instruction for Latin Americans, which operated within the District of Columbia Public Schools. Later, DC PCSB granted the school a charter, and it began operating as Carlos Rosario PCS in 1998. The school's mission is to provide education that prepares the diverse adult immigrant population of Washington, D.C. to become invested, productive citizens and members of American society who give back to family and community. The school accomplishes this through excellence in teaching and learning in partnership with the community and by fostering a safe and compassionate learning environment. The school provides an English as a second language program. It also offers computer literacy and GED classes and prepares students for the United States Naturalization Test. Annually, the school serves more than 2,500 students who represent over 80 different countries. Carlos Rosario is a single campus local education agency serving adults ages 16 and older in 2 facilities. Pursuant to the school's charter and charter agreement, Carlos Rosario fully met all 7 of its goals and student academic achievement expectations. DC PCSB staff also determined that the school has adhered to generally accepted accounting principles, has not engaged in a pattern of fiscal mismanagement, and is economically viable. Based on this review, the staff recommends that the DC PCSB board vote to continue the school's charter without conditions.
Would you like to say a few words before we open up for questions?
Sure, would love to. Thank you, Dr. Nissen. I was just sitting here remembering 20 years ago. I literally remember the day that we submitted our charter application on September 15th, 1997. And it's really amazing that these 20 years have gone by so very quickly. And I'm very proud and grateful to be structured as a charter school and to have this opportunity to have served thousands of DC's adult learners and immigrant learners and helping them achieve their dreams, and proud to be in this position to be able to continue to do that as a very strong organization with incredibly dedicated, talented, committed staff and faculty and amazing students. So we're just, again, like I said, grateful to be at this place in our history and to be an adult education charter school, and proudly to have been the first adult ed charter school in the nation, started in 1998, and here we are 20 years later. We've grown a lot and learned a lot over this process of being a charter school, and it's been really a wonderful process, and I'm looking forward to the next 20 years.
You'll be sitting here 20 years from now? Well, thank you. I think to be reflecting on a 20-year institution and what you've all accomplished, very very much appreciated. I'm going to start. Let me start with a sort of a broader question. We heard from DC Bilingual earlier speaking about the changes in the students that they're serving and the decline in ELL population, which I think speaks to a number of things, but to changes in the city. With your mission, your very powerful mission, and you and I have talked about this a little bit when I've come to visit, would love you to share a little bit about how you've seen your population change and what that means for the work that you all do.
I'll be glad to get started on that and then ask for my colleagues to add in if they'd like to. So our population is definitely here in Washington, D.C. and needing the services that we provide. 2 years ago, we started on a process of planning for the future of the organization and created a new strategic plan through 2020. And part of that plan was looking at the demographics in the District of Columbia and the need for our services. And what it did was revalidate the need for the work that we're doing. As you know, we're serving 2,000 adult learners, mostly immigrants. And we learned that there are thousands of additional adult English language learners in the District of Columbia who are not right now receiving services. And so, like I said, it was a real strong validation that what we're doing is probably as important as ever before, and maybe more important than ever before. As the district becomes increasingly expensive to live in, this community needs these supports, needs the language skills, needs their high school diplomas, the career certifications, so that they can remain in DC, so that they can be promoted in their jobs, so that they can buy homes and stay in this place that they call home now and want to stay. So it, like I said, it validated the work that we do and the need for the work that we do here in Washington, D.C. Over our school's 47 years of history, because we were founded in 1970, the demographics have evolved to reflect what's happening in the world. And so there was a period of time where we had an influx of Vietnamese immigrants to our school back in the early 1980s, before we were a charter school. And then in the later 1980s, an influx from Central America, for example. And so you see with our demographics, with students from 80 different countries speaking 50 different languages, that they really do represent the demographics of the immigrant community of Washington, D.C. today. And it's very rich in diversity, which I think is a real strength of the organization.
Darren, give you a chance to ask any questions. I know it's hard to break in by phone.
Yeah, given that we talked about English, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, given that we talked earlier with the school that works with the other end age-wise of the continuum, much younger English learners, I'm wondering, Allison, are you seeing much of a feeder pattern in terms of English language learners that are being served, maybe at the middle or high school level, ultimately ending up in your program?
Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, this is Ryan Monroe, Chief Academic Officer. And the question was whether we have students moving into our school as they age in. We don't see much of that. If we do, it's in our GED program, our English GED program, where there are students who have been in district schools who are the children of immigrants that might come into our program. We do, though, hearing the previous speaker talk about the lottery and the challenges of immigrant parents and English language learners understanding the lottery and getting their children in there, we do have a parent engagement program. About 40% of our students are parents of DC public school children. So we have a partnership with, what's it called? That they come in and help our students learn how the charter school system works and how to get into the lottery, and we'll have tables of different elementary schools, middle schools, high schools there to talk to parents. Yeah.
Right. To learn, I'll add on to that, to learn how the lottery process works, and as the previous panel was talking about, to help our community sometimes sit with them and help them fill out the application online to rank their first and second and third choices for schools to enroll in for their children. So helping them fundamentally helping them navigate the process of participating in that common lottery here in DC.
Darren, I just want to make sure you had your answer, or your question answered.
Yeah, it was. I didn't realize that you provided that resource, so that's good to hear. And I guess I'm more generally wondering if there's an opportunity to take some of the successful practices that you're using at the adult level and see them implemented in the lower grades.
I think that there are probably certain elements of our model that are transferable. We have groups come from around the country and observe our school, not only adult educators, but K-12 educators, to see the climate that we have of love and respect as our students come in, and how we celebrate success very intentionally at the school, how we do teacher training. So I'm not sure if I'm answering exactly what you were asking, Darren, but I do think that there are elements of any successful school, and I think most of the schools here are all successful in their own way, where we can learn from each other, and we're always very glad to share.
Yeah. No, you answered it well. Thank you. I think it's probably more, I hope the elementary, middle, and high schools out there that are paying attention or listening to that and maybe take advantage of having a relationship with your school and seeing what's going on there. So thank you.
Any other questions from the board? So just one last question. GED. Sort of be remiss not to mention that since your last, I believe, since you're the 15-year renewal, there have been some pretty major changes with regard to the GED. So we'd just love to hear a little bit about the experience, which I know is probably shared from many of your colleagues across the adult education sector.
I'll do a quick intro. So with the the new GED exam, which is I still call it new, although we've had it now for a few years, but it's incredibly rigorous. And we've had conversations with our students in that program, letting them know and affirming to them, you are earning this credential, and they really are. I just saw in the cafeteria this morning one of our students who passed the GED exam and just learned that on Friday. And there was this tremendous sense of accomplishment and pride, and then she was inspiring her fellow students who were there at lunchtime eating lunch with her. And that was the message that I was giving of, you've earned this high school diploma. I honestly, if I were to take that exam now, I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't pass that. It's just very challenging. But Dr. Monroe and our faculty and that team have really done an amazing job of creating their own materials to help our students prepare for this exam, especially for our Spanish language program and teacher training, and really do a wonderful, wonderful job in adapting to this new program. And I think in the end, it better prepares our students to thrive in higher education, although it's taking them longer to get there.
Great answer. So we're very proud of the work that our students and teachers are doing in our GED programs. The test became very rigorous. In simplified terms, I like to think that it went from a 9th grade test to an actual 12th grade test in 1 year, like overnight, actually. And so throughout the country, there was a big drop in the number of people who graduated, who passed their GED exams. It went down about 90%, and our school was no different. If you look at our data for that year, it's the 2014-15 school year, we had fewer than 10 graduates, so we have no data for that year because it was less than 10. The year before, we had 83 graduates. And so there was a couple of things happening then that happened around the country. One is that everyone wanted to get in and take the test before it got really hard. And then DACA played into that too. The immigration law that for youth or young people that came with their parents as children, and so part of that requirement was that they be in a GED program or an ESL program, and so our GED program got packed that year. Folks graduated. We had 83 graduates, and the next year we had less than 10, because then the bar was raised very high to 12th grade level. And so we have been working with that, and you can see our numbers are now in the mid-30s, which is what we had the year before everybody piled into our GED program. And so we're real proud of what they're doing. A lot of our students, especially in our Spanish GED program, come without having finished elementary school. and we work with them, and they work very hard. We have excellent instruction, excellent materials. We have a Plaza Comunitaria. It's a partnership with the Mexican Embassy where students can study and earn their elementary school diploma or their middle school diploma from Mexico, and that forms a base for them to go on to get their high school diploma through the GD program. And that partnership between the Plaza Comunitaria and the GED is an innovative program that's recognized by UNESCO as an innovative literacy program for adults, and it's on their website now. So we're very proud of that. Our English GED program also, it's a very rigorous program as well, and those students are learning, preparing for their GED, preparing for their high school in a second language. They're all English language learners taking this content in English. They're not given extra time to take the test, and they're working hard and passing at really good rates. So we're proud of the work that our students and our teachers are doing. It's a real quality program that we have there.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all the work that you guys do. Can I get, if there aren't any more questions, can I get a motion?
I move to continue the charter of Carlos Rosario, PCS.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And I have ayes from Saba Barreda, Don Soifer, and Steve Bumbau as well. Ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I have community college prep come up now? Okay. Would you like to introduce yourselves before we start?
Good evening. I am Monica Ray, Chair of the Board.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Connie Spinner, and I am CEO and Head of School. And behind us is Monica Jones, who is our Director of Operations, and, my gosh, I forgot, Thomas Gore, who's our Director of Student Support Services.
All right. Okay. DC PCSB conducted a 5-year charter review of Community College Prep Public Charter School according to the standard required by the School Reform Act that I read earlier. Community College Prep PCS began operating in 2013 under authorization from DC PCSB and serves adult students aged 18 and older. It operates one campus spread across 3 facilities in Wards 6 and 8. The mission of the school is to provide the education and skills development that will empower and prepare undercredited adults from post-secondary education success, viable employment, and lifelong learning. Community College Prep PCS offers core content classes to prepare students for the GED exam and for enrolling in community college classes. The school also offers career and technical education programming. Every student is assigned a student support specialist who helps him or her create and pursue an individual learning plan. The school offers blended learning with both traditional classroom learning and online independent programming for reading, writing, and math. Community College Prep PCS is a single-campus local education agency that has unique goals and student academic achievement expectations that are based on the Adult Education Performance Management Framework, also known as the AEPMF. The school established as its goals and academic achievement expectations that it would earn more than 40% of the weighted score in 3 of the 4 categories on the AEPMF for at least 2 of the following 3 school years, 14-15, 15-16, and 16-17. Pursuant to the school's charter and charter agreement, Community College Prep PCS met its goals and its academic achievement expectations. PCSB staff has also determined that the school has not committed a material violation of law or of its charter, has adhered to generally accepted accounting principles, has not engaged in a pattern of fiscal mismanagement, and is economically viable. Based on this review, DC-PCSB staff recommends that the DC-PCSB board vote to continue the school's charter without conditions.
One of the things that I am most proud about with regard to our school is that we are a work in progress. One of our purpose statements is to continuously change what we do and how we do it as data and research dictates. We've been influenced by a number of things, and we've had a lot of help. I want to publicly acknowledge the support and assistance of the staff and team from Carlos Rosario and from Friendship Public Charter School. I don't know how we ended up being all three on the same docket, but we know each other very well and very deeply. And our staff and leadership have benefited greatly from these two outstanding charter schools. I want to talk a little bit about the unique challenges that we faced. First of all, we have very purposefully chosen to be in Ward 7 and Ward 8. Those are the most understaffed and underdeveloped wards of the city. They are the wards that have the highest level of functional illiteracy. Moreover, they are the wards where individuals have had multi-generational poverty and lived in systems of underachievement over time. It has taken us a long time and a lot of work and a lot of faith on the part of my thought partner, who happens to also be my chair, to begin to figure out how to do what we do and do it well. In this 5th year, we have discovered that we are one more time having to redesign ourselves. We have become very deeply concerned about the need for life skills among our students, particularly as we look at Ward 7. To date, we serve every ward of the city except Ward 3. However, our deepest populations are in Ward 8 and Ward 7, and we fully expect that they will stay that way. We serve a large population of returning citizens because they relocate to that part of the District of Columbia, and we have a deep commitment to them. Getting our students to the point where they have the kind of resiliency, executive level thinking skills, and the kind of self-management skills that create the fulcrum for them to grow to the knowledge-based economy of the District of Columbia is our continuing aim. So we work hard at the GED. We did very well this year after a challenging time of redefining GED preparation. We think we will do equally as well in the year we're in now, but it will not be without struggle. One of the things that we think makes it possible for us to do this work is that we are constantly on the hunt among other charter schools. We've visited at least 3 of them to look at how they use data, how they interpret and analyze data, and how that data informs their decision making. We are grappling with decisions around attendance. That is a continuing challenge for us when we work with adults who have not been used to going to school regularly. They weren't encouraged to do it in high school. They weren't encouraged to do it in the lower grades. And so consequently, we begin to try to make school a place that they want to be and that has meaning for them. So we're redesigning ourselves yet one more time. We're changing some very critical things, but not without a rationale among our data. And we think that we're on a road that's going to make us solid and able to meet the needs of the Ward 7 and Ward 8 community.
Thank you. Open it up to our board for any questions or comments. Darren, if I give you an opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Connie, as a board member who was privileged to be part of the approval for your charter several years back. I'm really pleased with your progress, and I definitely appreciate that your focus is on serving adults in Ward 7 and Ward 8, where so many of the challenges we're trying to address are occurring. So could you, I'm going to ask you, could you dig in a little more on what you mean when you use the term life skills, and how the lack of those skills is creating a challenge for the students attending your school?
Certainly. I think one of the things that we've come to respect and understand is that our students have not been taught how to think critically and apply it in their everyday lives. Things that we take for granted. I grew up in Northeast Washington in a part called Deanwood. I'm the oldest of 8 children, and I tell people all the time, in my family, you got 3 things that were brand new: your shoes, your underwear, and your socks. Everything else came from the Georgetown Nearly New shop. My mother had to outfit 8 kids, and those clothes had to last. So she went where very entitled people left their clothes, and we were able to get them through 3 or 4 kids. Our students don't know how to do that. My mother grew salad garden near the house and vegetable garden in the rest of the backyard. My students don't think about that. They spend most of their lives between Burger King and McDonald's. Therefore, their children are obese. They have problems with their own physical well-being. And on average, 40% of our students are in hospital or in urgent care for at least 3 times a year. That has a direct impact on their ability to be able to be in school and do the things they need. These are the kind of data that we've collected on them. We started in year 2 to do something called a data book. And we started with data on our students. We knew we needed to know more about them, who they were, and what they brought to the learning environment, and what we needed to do to support them. That data book is richer this year than it's ever been. But it's also troubling because a lot of the things that are happening in our city are making it harder and harder for them to live with any kind of normalcy. We don't keep a waiting list because their telephone numbers and their contact changes that quickly. 23% of our students are either homeless or living in temporary housing situations, but still they come to school. And so figuring out how to make as meaningful as possible the 60% of the time that we're able to get them, and to increase that time becomes an important thing for us. So those are some of the things that we and Darren, we've got a t-shirt for you. You earned it. So don't go away before we get a chance to give you your polo shirt.
Okay, thank you very much. As a follow-up, I just wanted to know: do you feel that you are getting supports? Like, some of this goes beyond certainly our role as an authorizer or even academic kinds of issues. Do you feel that you're getting the kinds of support on a citywide level that you need, or are there things you wish you were getting to make your work easier?
Not. But we've been able to do some very creative things. You ask me, and I'm going to, at this point in my life, I don't bite my tongue. But we have some unique partnerships going. Right now, we have a partnership with the Department of Employment Services. 200 of our students are project empowerment students. And why is that important? It's important because they get paid to go to school. And believe it or not, they still only get there 65% of the time. So we're working on life skills for them so we can get that 65 to 85%. But something as simple as getting $8 a day, an hour, to go to school makes the difference sometime between whether or not they can come. So are we getting all the support? No, but we're learning how to work with other public agencies. We're learning how to braid our funding stream. I recently went to the same Department of Employment Services and said, you know, you're going to start a training program. If you cite us and give us a lab and maintain it, we can bring a teacher over here and help you get the base skills for these people, because you can't train them until they get to the 8th grade level in reading. So we're beginning to build the kind of relationships. This is an unusual thing for the District of Columbia. We haven't done a lot of it. I've seen it happen in other states where there's a statewide infrastructure to accommodate it. But our unique situation as a city-state sometimes precludes those kinds of things happening.
As you look through oh, Darren, did you have another question?
No, I just was saying, thank you very much. Go right ahead.
Looking at the review and your performance over the last few years, it's pretty amazing to see the trajectory that you're on. And there's one particular data point that really stands out in a good way, which is as you look at the percentage of students entering employment or post-secondary education from 2014-15, where it was 6.6%, to 2016-2017, where it's 96.3%, which our staff says is the highest in the sector. Please tell us how did you do that?
It was a fluke. I will tell you, it really didn't have anything to do with major mental. I talked to my chairperson. Like I said, I've got the best partner in the world, and I said, we're going to take a hit with GED. It's going to take us at least 3 years to get it right. And while we're getting it right, we still have to make numbers. So we began to invigorate our CTE program. We partnered with the state to have the largest Microsoft Office Suite program, because Microsoft Office Suite is required on 690,000 jobs in the District of Columbia. We started a HVAC program, which we had no intentions of doing, but we didn't have something for men coming out of incarceration that assured that they could get a job. And that was what they wanted more than anything else. So going after CFC training to get those guys who were custodians up to the next level of certification, which gave them a better job, and then getting contracting with the training group to do the bench work for the guys who hadn't had that was critical. We partnered with the Hope Project and started IT because while the Department of Employment Services had a youth program for 18 to 22-year-olds, if you were 23, you couldn't get in. And the highest score ever made on the CompTIA A+ exam was made by an older student in his first year with us with CompTIA A+. He's now 6 figures at Verizon. So we learned some things about getting people to work and getting them to work in areas where they could make a living wage for this city, which is $67,000 a year.
Well, we should all have some flukes like that.
It was a
pretty amazing journey.
Well, we're still learning from it.
Well, thank you. Any other questions from the board? If not, I'll take a motion on community college prep.
I move to continue the charter of community college prep PCS.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And in favor as well, Saba Barreda, Don Soifer, Steve Bumbau. Congratulations. Thank you.
Pleasure and thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now up, friendship.
Scoot in. As many chairs as you need. If you want to bring them over there. Okay. Anyone here? Got it. Oh, who wants to sit here? Okay, welcome. you want to start with introducing yourselves?
CEO, you should start.
Sure. Pat Brantley, CEO for Friendship Public Charter School.
My name
Good
is
evening.
Donald Hintz. I'm the founder and chairman of Friendship Public Charter School.
Gregory Prince, Vice Chair of the Board.
Carol Thompson Cole, member of the board.
Rachel Roberts, Senior Director of Student Support Services.
Ken Cherry, Chief of Staff.
Vielka Scott Marcus, Chief Academic Officer.
Monique Miller, I'm Director of Performance Reporting.
Thank you very much. All right. DC PCSB conducted a 20-year charter review of Friendship Public Charter School according to the standard required by the School Reform Act that I read earlier. Friendship PCS, which serves students in grades pre-kindergarten 3 through 12, began operating in 1998 under authorization from DC PCSB and is currently in its 20th year of operation. The school was started by Friendship House Association, a DC nonprofit social service organization that began educating DC children in 1904. Friendship PCS currently operates 12 campuses across the district, 1 online program, 5 elementary campuses, 4 middle school campuses, and 2 high school campuses. The mission of the school is to provide a world-class education that motivates students to achieve high academic standards, enjoy learning, and develop as ethical, literate, well-rounded, and self-sufficient citizens who contribute actively to their communities. Each of the school's 12 campuses met the standard outlined in the goals, with the exception of Friendship PCS Technology Preparatory Middle, which did not meet the goal of achieving at least 50% on the PMF in 2 of the most recent 5 years. However, the Technology Preparatory Middle Campus met the discretionary improvement provision in its charter agreement. Therefore, DC PCSB staff recommends, pursuant to the improvement clause in the school's charter, that the board exercise its discretion and determine this campus met the goal. After discussion with the school, Friendship PCS desires to reconfigure its southeast campus from PK3-5 to 2 campuses, a PK3 through 3rd and a 4th through 8, which is aligned with other models in the LEA. This reconfiguration will assimilate Technology Preparatory Middle into Southeast Academy and reduce the enrollment of new 6th grade students beginning in school year 2018-19. DC PCSB staff has also determined that the school has not committed a material violation of law or of its charter, has adhered to generally accepted accounting principles, has not engaged in a pattern of fiscal mismanagement, and is economically viable. DC PCSB staff recommends that the board vote to continue the school's charter. The LEA and DC PCSB will execute a signed charter amendment as of March 19, 2018, that number 1, adopts goals aligned with the revised PMF as goals policy. Number 2, commits the LEA to reconfigure its Southeast Academy and Tech Prep middle campuses. And number 3, decreases the LEA's enrollment ceiling from 5,340 to 5,115.
To make an opening statement, some comments.
We, in terms of the public tech prep, I think we will come back to that, but that's an important change, but I think makes a lot of sense. The whole configuration of a 4th through 8th grade is very important. But in terms of the beginning of the comments, we are excited to be here. We are excited to be a part of this process. We appreciate the board's efforts and the staff's efforts to work with us in some of the changes that we've made, some of the adoptions that we have done over the last couple of years. We appreciate that support. We note that the staff has deemed that we have met all of our goals and achievement expectations for the 5 years, and these PMF goals are important to us, and we endeavor to exceed them in every campus. But they are, as we've always said, our floor, not our ceiling. For us, we strive to enhance the students who are ready, make sure they're ready for success in college. And we have argued in the past, I have argued before you in the past, that college success we think should be rated more highly in the whole process, and we push ourselves to feel that what our students do in college matters. We have a responsibility to be responsible for them, and we hold ourselves to that standard, though it's less important in what you all present. We have found that the attempt to provide a world-class education creates a lot of pressure in terms of resources, but these students, our students, all of the students in the district deserve the very best. Simply, as many have said in this group, in our group, when there is a better, good is not good enough, and that is the way we try to drive ourselves. For the past 20 years and the next 20 years, we remain committed to those priorities. We've talked about the tech prep change, which I think is a very important one, and myself, having dealt with the whole issue of transitions from middle schools to high schools and high schools to colleges, a 4-8 configuration makes a lot more sense in terms of preparing students for that process. And I think will be important in the long run, because students who learn over the 4th through 8th grades how to transition into high school are learning a process of transition that will help them when they transition from high school into colleges. I think that would end the comments that I would make. I'm sure there'll be other questions, and I think that's my last role at this point, if that's correct. Who goes?
Want to treat more anecdotal evidence? I will be a little bit more anecdotal. I was one of the 2 or 3 people who had submitted a charter that spent the entire year before the charter actually opened traveling around the city with members of the Public Charter School Board, telling people in the city at various venues what charter schools were and what they could possibly do. You could probably imagine that in many instances we were viciously attacked. So it's not just a matter of casualness that friendship started and that friendship survives. It's a huge, huge effort. We're the first multi-campus charter school in America, period. Our dreams were always significant. To have been a part of Friendship House and to know that east of the city is where education was most needed was something that a lot of people just took strangely. When we went to get our buildings, they refused to give us the occupancy permits. The first day we opened with buses out front of the buildings so that if we didn't get occupancy permits, we could take the kids to the zoo. We got occupancy permits at 8:45 in the morning. Our kids were in class and teaching was going on at 9 a.m. It's history from there. We strive. We work with kids who come from the poorest part of the city. We believe that's our mission. I think you also need to take a serious amount of time and look at half of the staff at public charter schools in the city are former Friendship House people. I don't know how many principals we have out there, but there are quite a few from Rocket Ship on. They were Friendship House staffers. And so we played our role, and we think we'll continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize that the hour is late, and so I will be brief. But building on what Dr. Prince has said, for the past 20 years and the 20 years ahead, we do remain steadfast to our priorities, and that is truly preparing students for readiness in college by focusing on academics, mindset, and values. We believe that critical to accelerating our work is restructuring the Tech Prep campus, and I know you're already aware of that. Our Tech Prep campus takes in students in the 6th and 7th grade. and only has about 2 years to prepare them for the terminal grade of the 8th grade. And so while we see growth on that campus, it has been much slower than what is happening at our Tier 1 elementary and middle school campuses, those middle schools primarily organized from 4th to 8th grade. We believe that having more time with those students will help to prepare them for high school in a way that's accelerated versus what we have now. I would also say that in our next phase, we're focused on deepening our work in restorative practices, in continuing the implementation of Common Core aligned curricula, and in focusing on reading. Finally, as we look toward the next 5 years, we want to ensure that we are continuing to deliver a diverse set of options and opportunities for the children and families in DC. In partnership with you, we've been able to bring to the DC community a Reggio Emilia program. We have an international baccalaureate program. We have significant advanced placement and dual enrollment and DC's first early college program. We also have the only virtual school for grades K to 8, which we look forward to expanding to DC's first virtual high school sometime soon. So we thank you for this opportunity to be heard and look forward to any questions that you might have.
Thank you. The hour may be late, but it's only appropriate that we take the opportunity to recognize the contributions that Friendship has made. Mr. Hentz, Pat, now under your leadership, thank you. Thank you for all that you do. And I think you just did an excellent job of reminding us of the diversity of choices as well that you've been able to offer as the campuses in the LEA has expanded. So thank you. Thank you for all of that. Let me open it. I have a question or two, but let me open it first to my board members. Darren, if you have any comments or questions.
Yes, I sure do. So first, I'll start by echoing the congratulations and thanks to the entire Friendship staff, in particular Pat Brantley and Donald Hentz, for 20 years of serving, not just serving students in DC, but serving some of the most needy students in DC. It's very impressive. I think at this point you're in, I believe, 4 out of the 8 wards across the city, and you have over 4,000 students, so probably something like 1 out of every 12 or 13 charter students are attending a Friendship school, so that's very notable. And I guess I would just ask, given that the discussion of school reform and education in DC is a prominent conversation that's being had, I would invite either Ms. Brantley or Mr. Hentz to comment on what do you think are the priorities for your charter or just charters in general as we move forward to make sure we're meeting the needs of all of our students. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Pat pointed over here because she wants to start trouble. I believe that we're not doing enough to foster differentiation among charter schools. When we first started to build the schools, there were all kinds of charter schools. If you like art, you could be that. If you wanted an Afrocentric education, you could go to Roots. If you wanted something else, you could go. I believe that the more we make them the same, the less we are talking about school choice. If we're going to look like DCPS, be DCPS. But I just absolutely believe that people need to have the opportunity to send their kids to a school that is reflective of what they want their child to be. If I want my child to paint, I hope there's a school that offers that for my child. If I want my child to be in music, I hope that that is the case. And it ought to be so with a charter school. You should not be able to walk in one charter school and walk across the street and it is exactly the same. It just shouldn't be that way, and that's really what I believe. There's more.
I think
think I would add that as the city is changing and obviously becoming more affluent, there are still many families across the city who are experiencing high levels of poverty, of trauma, students who are at risk. Certainly in our Southeast Tech Prep corridor, 3/4 of the students are deemed at risk. And so we see a great need for more mental health services in the city. We see a need for, in many cases, support for year-round school. We see a need for support for the families, and all those things can't be accomplished just in school. They can certainly be accomplished through partners. When Connie Spinner was here, she mentioned some work with us, and we have families that are involved with her school and in project empowerment. And so I would say, even as the city changes and as we see underlying changes to school populations, don't overlook the needs of the students who are still at risk in the city. And I don't think that this board does overlook those needs, but I think that we have to come together, Chartering Authority, schools, our state representatives, and really talk about better supports for the needs of our families who are most at risk.
Thank
you. I wasn't programmed to answer that question, so I'm probably going to get in a lot of trouble now that I answer it. But it is my thinking in part listening to the two schools before us and the discussion about teaching English as a second language, of which I am certified as a teacher of English as a second language from Georgetown many, many years ago, so I'm sure the certification has no meaning now. But I've been involved in that field. I've worked internationally, been on the boards of international universities. And one thing I would like, which underscores Don's theme about diversity, is that we're trying to be a world-class institution, which involves introducing our students to the world around them. We need to have a stronger international focus. And I understand there was a certain language, part of it was bilingual when we were talking earlier, the schools were talking, and part of it was moving students out of and into the main track English. Our goal should be to preserve bilingualism. This nation is desperately in need of students with multi-language skills. These students who come to us are natural resources, which are rarely treated as national and natural resources. Many of them basically inherit a feeling that they're not quite good enough because they don't speak English as well as others, when indeed many of them are doing things intellectually that I would consider myself a genius if I could do in terms of adapting between two cultures. So I would just, it's a goal of friendship to provide that kind of and it's not easy to do. But we live in a city where it should be a natural for us to stress that capacity and to grow that capacity. And we're trying to do that slowly. But please remember, the students who come here with other languages are a great national resource.
Thank you for emphasizing that point. Appreciate that. Ricardo?
Yep, I did want to switch gears just a little bit to your online program and just ask a little bit about what are some of the trends that you're seeing in the online program, the growth and projections for that program.
So certainly since we launched or took over that program 2 years ago, we've seen significant growth in enrollment. Approximately from 100 to 150 students, so very significant growth, and a lot of demand across the city for the program. We've also seen growth in outcomes for the school. So while the PMF score went down, if you look at all the measures except for re-enrollment, they were moving up. And so that was sort of growth, and in part, ELA and math, most of them were moving up. We do see the challenge, though, with enrollment and re-enrollment. As you might be aware, in order to be eligible or to apply for the school or to enroll, you must have a learning coach full-time in the home. And that's a very important custodial function. Some of the students are as young as kindergarten. And so when there isn't an adult available in the home, we have to push for withdrawal of that student. And so we've had some of that discussion with your staff, with board members, because we think that it's difficult to have an incentive for parents not to be truthful about whether or not there is a parent in the home, just given the issues of safety and monitoring. In any case, though, we do see the school is growing, and families are now really advocating for a high school option for their children. And so that is something that we hope to bring before you soon to talk about the expansion to high school.
So just a quick question about, you have several schools that are Tier 2, and thinking about what supports, needs, and resources do you think would be most helpful to elevate them to Tier 1 status?
So certainly equitable funding would help us to put more resources in our schools, and I know that there are obviously some advocacy and legal efforts around that right now, led by the association and Focus and a few charters. But aside from that, we have implemented new curricula, Eureka Math, Wit and Wisdom, Springboard at the high school level. And so we see those that new curricula as bearing fruit. At the high school level, which is really where we are focused, we look not only at sort of the elements of PARCC, we tend to look at PSAT and SAT, and we can see that some of the efforts that we put in place over the last couple of years are improving our students' readiness for those tests, and those scores are moving upward. And quite frankly, when we think about the high school, as important as PARCC is to us, PSAT and SAT make a difference to our students' acceptance into college and their eligibility for scholarships. And so we pay a lot of attention to those metrics.
Can you talk more about what you've put in place or implemented that has shifted the scores?
Sure. We have reading specialists that we started last year at every campus. We have the curriculum that I mentioned, which started as a pilot 2 years ago and then implemented across all schools last year. Do you want? It's certainly instructional specialists in reading and math in ELA and math at every campus as well. And that was started 2 years ago.
Yes.
So Chairman Hunt reminds me that we also have a very significant retention strategy around our students. And so you'll see that our students who enter in 9th grade are likely to be on-time graduates in 12th grade. There isn't really a drop-off of those students for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And so we're quite proud of that. We've been commended by this board before of taking in students at various grade levels throughout the history of the school. Although what you'll see is that we do strive to get in students earlier and retain them longer. But at our high schools, particularly at our collegiate high school, when we look at the 9th grade, most students are feeding from outside of the Friendship Network just because of the popularity of that program.
I'll reiterate our commendation on that and our appreciation of that. One potentially final question, just on the reconfiguration, just to touch upon that. Makes sense and seems to be minimally disruptive to families and students. Let me just gut check that on the record and sort of get a sense for what you've heard, how the preparation for that seems to be going.
Yes, absolutely. We have had many conversations on this with our school community, and the agreement is bringing in students in the 6th grade and then exiting them at the 8th grade is not providing them with the time necessary to do the full academic supports that we need to do. There is also the issue that, as I mentioned, there's a high population of at-risk students, almost 3/4 of the students that are there. And when we think about at-risk students, that suggests that those are students who may have less stability, more trauma or needs. And so having them connected in one environment for 5 years versus 2 or 3, and with deeper connections to adults, will help us as much as having more time with them will. And so we think that that's a really important piece, but we have gut-checked it, more than gut-checked it, really explored it with our school community, and there is just overwhelming agreement that we need these students from 4th to 8th grade.
any concerns or any indicators that you think would suggest as you begin the process that there's something that you need to take a closer look at?
Sure. I mean, I'll give an example. Our Chamberlain and Woodridge campuses started as K-5. And we reconfigured those a few years ago to make them K-3 and then 4-8. Our Blow Pierce campus was a 6-8 campus that we reconfigured to be a 4-8 with a feeder preschool to 3. And in those examples, all of those schools moved swiftly to Tier 1, including Blow Pierce, which at one point, very similar to Tech Prep, was one of our lower performing campuses. And just for reference, Blow Pierce has very similar at-risk and high poverty, yes, as our Tech Prep campus.
We'll look forward to hearing about how all of that goes. One more.
So in terms of the SAT and ACT rates, you have a really high acceptance for college. And in thinking about that, how are you making sure that they're actually prepared? How are we thinking about making sure that, socially, but also academically, that they're not being pushed to attend college, but, are actually going through because they've achieved that?
I absolutely do want to say that we are pushing students to attend college, and we don't apologize for doing that. We think that it's important that students are prepared and that they consider that one of their aspirations. That said, we run a fairly robust alumni program, and so we do have data around student retention. From their freshman year to their sophomore year and all the way through. We also have an alumni program with full-time staff. We have ambassadors on college campuses. We try to concentrate our students on different colleges throughout the country with those ambassadors to help support them in terms of minimizing attrition from college. In terms of readiness, we have a fairly robust dual enrollment program. So we have students that are taking courses at the University of Maryland, at UDC. We have them taking courses also online at Arizona State and Granite College. And so students have access to those courses in the 11th and 12th grade. So those are some of the ways that we are supporting their readiness for college.
And what do the rates look like in terms of their to and through and completion rates?
Sure. So when we look at retention, meaning students who enter and then are there for the second year of their sophomore year, that's about 75%. And then retention through to the end for students that we're tracking is about 50%, graduating within 6 years. Is that correct? In 6 years. 6 years, 30%, 6 years.
I just like to reinforce we are pushing students for college. Our goal, and I think this is fair beyond just friendship, what they need to learn to succeed in college is what they're going to need to learn to succeed if they go into a trade situation or into the military. And come to the 12th grade or end of the 11th and the 12th grade, we want them to have viable, real choices. That means we would like them, in effect, to have tough choices. That they really have an option of picking a trade or a certificate and moving into a well-paying job that has promotional prospects and that they have the skills that they know they can grow in that career. Or that they have real college choices with financial aid and choices that they can use. And that means you have to push and help them understand that the skills are going to be the same. The critical thinking, the self-advocacy, the social, emotional skills, as well as the academic skills, they're going to need in whatever they do, whatever career they choose, the military or college. So I think unapologetically, it is a push.
Thank you. All right, I think we are ready for a motion.
I move to continue the Charter of Friendship PCS and approve the DC PCSB Board Chair to sign the Charter Agreement Amendment that memorializes the changes included in the staff proposal on the Board's behalf.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And ayes from Saba Boreda, Don Soifer, and Steve Bumbau. Congratulations, 20 years. Thank you. Congratulations. I know, it's like that's quite a turnout for friendship. All right, we're almost at the end here. For our board members, any new business for us to handle this evening? I take that as a no. If there's no new business, we'll open the. I'm sorry, Darren.
Yeah, one piece of new business. I just wanted to wish our deputy director, Ms. Naomi Rubin DeVoe, a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Naomi.
Can we issue an official proclamation?
I used to do that.
Naomi Shelton will begin that process. Happy birthday, Naomi. If there's no new business, we'll open the floor for public comment. Any last public comment before we vote to adjourn? All right. Then, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the March 19th, 2018 board meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Excellent. Thank you. See you in April.